We're heading to Hilltop for this weekly challenge. Quite suitably, Hilltop Maggie is the leader. She is a pretty good character, especially if you're attacking non-normal walkers or humans. So hopefully we're going to have a couple of those in this set of missions. I'm also bringing Yumiko. Shooters start charged this week, and Mercer's coming along as well, just so we can do a bit of spray and pray. Let's just see what we got in store. What can I say? I just fancy doing a video. It's that simple. Guild Wars doesn't seem to be on for some reason. So, yeah, just thought we'd have a quick look at the weekly challenge, see what's ahead of us. And that can kind of help you plan your strategy. So this one, I think really you're talking about ranged characters having quite an advantage here. There is a threat counter, but walkers are just going to be flooding out of the every corner anyway. Think about which ones are closest to you, deal with those ones first. You might not necessarily have to kill everything, just slowing them down, crippling them. That'll be good enough. All you've got to do is keep them at bay until you escape. It's one of those missions where you want to bear in mind. So you might be able to hear my cat. She wants strokes. One of those missions where you need to bear in mind what the objective is. You're just looking to escape. I think having characters with weapons that cripple or ensnare, very, very useful. Mercer, of course, I gave him the Code Orange Assault Rifle. Very wide arc, very long range. If you've got anything like that, very, very useful. If you don't, just see what you've got in your, amongst your weapons that might be able to slow walkers down. You've also got tools as well. If it's getting into those later missions and you're really struggling, maybe you don't have enough weapons to cripple the walkers or otherwise slow them down, throw out some flares to distract them. Throw out some stun grenades. Even if you can't stun the enemy, you can shove them back a square. The Walker's Mask, that support, that recently got a big boost. Stand some survivors in front of walkers that are advancing. Give them pile of guts. They'll block them. It's not a tough mission. Kill all walkers in the area. Looks like we've got some tanks. That's good. That makes use of Hilltop Maggie's leadership trait. Oh yes, this one's a bit of a tough one because you start with these guys here. Now, obviously, we are just starting off. So not too tough. We can take down even a tank in one turn. That will quickly change as we go up the levels. So what do? Well, think about using things like grenades to weaken those enemies. Flares, you could use them, you could ignore them. Have you got any weapons that can do things like confuse the enemies, like those flags? Very, very useful. But if you can deal with those walkers that start quite close to you, deal with those nice and quickly, the rest of the mission's absolutely fine. That's a pretty easy mission. Again, having weapons that will slow the walkers down, that buys you some time. If you've got those, even if you don't have anything like that, think of things like putting survivors on Overwatch, give them weapons that interrupt the enemy. It might take a while to kill the enemy, but they won't be able to do anything to you. But yeah, kill those walkers that start on the left of the screen, same as you, and then the rest of it, just take your time. That's actually a pretty easy mission. If you do have any drama with it or any others, then just let me know and either I or somebody else in the comments will help. Find the loot and get to the exit. Well, this sounds like a job for Maggie's husband. Let's give him that. Yeah, let's get to it. So finding the loot, any kind of mission where you're searching through trunks or trying to find stuff, Glenn, of course, is a very good pick. Throughout all of this, bear in mind that shooters start off charged. That makes a big deal. It makes a difference. Yeah, Glenn really comes into his own here. We've got a threat counter and I'm making a lot of noise. That's something to bear in mind. If you find yourself sort of struggling as the missions progress, as they get tougher, then the threat counter is definitely a consideration. What you can do is perhaps use weapons like Glenn has got here, which reduces threat. Or, of course, simply keep it quiet, like Yumiko's doing with her weapon. Your other shooters, if they've got weapons that make noise, they could still Overwatch. That's fine. Overwatch doesn't create any threat. This one's pretty tough. You're starting at the bottom middle of the map, and you're surrounded by walkers. There's a couple which are at the top of the map, but it's not a very far walk for them to get to you. And they include things like tanks. I've had good success with characters like Tyrese, you know, creating that big debuff circle that slows the walkers down, hurts them. Having weapons that interrupt or maces. And putting the characters on Overwatch so that they either knock the walkers back or interrupt them so that they're not hurting you. Again, things like Whisperer's Mask and Flares could be essential for buying time. If you're really struggling on this, you could focus on a smaller group of walkers by distracting the others and then come back. I think bearing in mind that there's a threat counter on that mission, quite important as well. What I might do, this is a fun set of missions so far. If I do sometimes do videos of the Plague difficulties. I don't often get there because sometimes it can feel like a bit of a grind. This is a really good set of missions though, with a very interesting lead hero. So, looks like we've got some Humies. Come on, Rosita. It's having a discussion in the comments about who is the best bruiser. Protector Daryl or Fighter Rosita. I've had great luck with, well, I've had great success with Protector Daryl. He's a very, very good character. Is Rosita still the best? Tough to say. Okay, so the reason why I'm using a bruiser is because obviously that's very effective against humans. Doesn't matter how tough an enemy is if they are incapacitated. That's all that matters, right? Let's be very careful about how we advance. That's 4 down. How many we've got left? At least one more. Now, thinking about your line of sight, how you're engaging the enemy, making sure that you're just doing it one enemy at a time. That's pretty wise. I'm thinking that Rick could be a really good choice here because of his insta-kill with his heirloom. Otherwise, having weapons that will, you know, stun the enemy, if you can incapacitate them or slow them down sufficiently, if they're a melee class of human, then they're useless. If they can't get up close and personal, they can't use their weapons. Doesn't matter how tough they are, doesn't matter how long they take to die. As you go through the levels and you get to the higher difficulties, incendiary weapons, bit of a consideration. Humans really are tough as you get to those later levels. Being able to set them light, pretty handy. Anything that will stun them, very useful. Keeping a special eye out for ranged characters. Melee characters, much more easy to deal with. If they can shoot you, well, you're looking at really sort of trying to engage them at long range, but that's very difficult on that mission. I think that just submitting to the fact that you're probably going to be up close and personal and bringing some bruisers, not a bad idea. Get the loot, okay. Another one where we're making use of Maggie's bestest bud and husband, Glenn. Oh, One-Eye Glenn. Yeah, okay, so this one gets tricky as well, this mission. Definitely one where I think Glenn is a good pick. If you can do things like that to reduce threats, even better. What you want to do is kind of try and maximize Glenn's movement. If there had been a walker, say, here, I could have searched that bin, could have killed the walker and then moved another half, another movement. Glenn, it's very easy to get him just sort of sprinting around the entire map. No. Yeah, Glenn, absolute first draft pick on this one. Starting off with a lot of walkers on the screen, that's something you're going to have to deal with. There is a threat counter. I wouldn't want any more walkers on screen than I have to deal with. So I'd really be thinking about bringing silent weapons, melee characters. Of course, Maggie is a ranged character, but if you can get a silent weapon, they're pretty common. It's a wonderful trait to have. Does not increase threat. Get the loot. Great. Yes, we got 3 missions where Glenn is a great choice. Oh, here we go. So, I remember being told about that. I genuinely didn't know about it initially. I remember struggling through this mission. Always just trying to deal with these walkers as they came flooding out. It's a little bit cheeky. You can click on those doors, but it's not like they're glowing. Not like, those, but you can do that, and all of a sudden, this mission becomes easy. I gotta give credit to the Walking Dead No Man's Land community. I remember initially finding out about that little trick. I hadn't discovered it myself, but that's the whole thing. People in this community, they help each other out. And you know what this mission is like if you don't know that little trick. By now we would be swamped with walkers. Not too much of a problem when it's on a low difficulty. When things get more difficult, oof, this mission can be a killer. That remains one of my favorite tips. There's a great mission as well where you're searching a warehouse. I think it's inspired by a season 11 episode, and there's some really fun tricks. This kind of mission is exactly what I like. There's a strategy that you can use to make things easier for yourself. I think that makes for a great mission in The Walking Dead No Man's Land. Alright, so that's what we've got ahead of us. I think we are back to the start of the cycle. Let's just check. Yes. So that's what we got. It's a really good fun it's a good fun set of missions. We've got a great character. Hilltop missions with Hilltop Maggie. Lots of missions where Glenn is a great pick as well. This is a really good fun set. Hopefully you and your guild will get a fantastic score. Yes, and thank you very much for watching. I will catch you in the next video.